Good morning, Bible study methods, friends. I'm trying to make a quick video explaining how to do the final analysis paper. We'll probably do that in class at some point, but in case you missed the class, I wanted to have a video kind of going over it orally, so it's not just pages and pages of information. Things you need to start with: you need to make sure that somewhere you have open up on a screen your exegetical paper guide or final analysis paper guide that's on Converge. You're going to need to have your Ephesians comments assignment A and B accessible, which is also on Converge. And at some point we are going to be getting on the interweb and going to the Inside Corbin page, going to the library and looking at journal articles on EBSCOhost. So you need to kind of be set up, so if you need to pause to do this, that's fine. Otherwise, let's go for it. If you open up the final analysis paper guide, you'll see that on the first page there is a general outline and explanation. Title page, there's a paragraph about that. There's an introduction. There's the context section, a content section, an application, and a bibliography. So some just basic notes. Some of this, at this point in the semester, if this is, like March 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, somewhere in there, most of this paper we have not done. You have done a word study, which you can use part of it, probably only at best 4 sentences of the word study. You will use most of your historical cultural paper, and you will use all of your literary context paper. But still, with all of that there done, that's still probably only about 3 pages of the total 15 that this is going to take. Remember, my class doesn't have a final. This is the big put it all together and show me that you got it assignment, and it's worth 33% of your grade. So if you are nervous about this paper and its effect on your grade, remember that you can always email me sections of this paper with specific questions, like asking me to look over and make sure something's clear, anything like that, and I will look it over and give you some feedback. So there's no reason for you to get a bad grade on this. If you've never done a paper like this, you really should send me email sections early, and I will give you comments. I don't know that I've had a single person who's emailed me this paper early more than once, meaning that they sent more than one submission to me, ever get anything below a C. And usually that's more like A and B range. So let's talk about this paper. This is an exegetical paper, which means you are going to take Ephesians 2:1 through 10. You're going to give me an overview of the book. You're going to introduce me to the subject matter. You're going to walk me through all of the context, both historical, cultural, literary. Then you're going to go verse by verse and comment on the meaning of the passage and explain it thoroughly. Then in the last section, you're going to show me how you would apply it, and you're going to tell me about how you did apply it to your life, with a work cited at the end. So let's kind of move along on the final analysis paper guide after you see those first 2 pages outlining kind of the basic expectations. Some big things to note: you will need to go to the library for commentaries, and you will need to find some journal articles. This will all be part of the Ephesians comments B part of the paper, and so be advised that there will be some library/research work. But let's look at the example. The example, if you're still on the final analysis paper guide, is I think page 3, and you see there's a cover page. And then page 4 is our first place of getting into what I believe is called the title page. It begins with the theme statement of the book. Note that this is not the theme statement of a passage. This is the book's main theme, and we've already gone over this. So look at past papers where I've asked for the theme statement, and make it very clear. A theme statement, by the way, is not 1, 2, 3, 4 words. It is a clear statement. It is not 2 sentences. It is not 4 lines of text. It is just specifically telling me what is the theme of the book, and we've already done this. The next thing you'll see is the main idea of the passage. Our passage is Ephesians 2:1 through 10. How would you state the main idea? Again, don't do it in 1 word. Do it in a good sentence or 2, but try to work through the overview, synthesis, a summary, something that gets at what the passage is generally telling me, because you're introducing me on this first page to the paper. Then there's an outline of the passage. How would you build an outline, not of the book of Ephesians, but of these 10 verses? Which verses naturally flow together? That is page 1. On the second page of again, it's like page 4 of the document, but you'll see that there's an introduction section. I think you should do this absolutely last. I don't think you should be doing the introduction when you haven't finished the paper yet, because I think when you've finished living the paper, the application, you're in a good place to do two things: to tell me what the passage is about and hook me with that into your paper, and make sure that it's creative. This is not where I want you to sound Bible nerd on an introduction. You're trying to interest a reader who does not want to read your paper. So try to be creative and try to creatively hook me with what your paper is actually about. Not meaning final analysis or exegesis or something like that, but you're hooking me with maybe an idea like grace or new life or something. So do that last. Okay, the next section we're going to talk about is context. Now, context section is half historical cultural context, half literary. You have done both of those things already, a historical cultural and a literary. So the first part of the context section should be your historical cultural context about the book of Ephesians, the people in Ephesus. So if you go back to your historical cultural paper you already turned in to me, that would be the first page of information that you turned in, where it was the general background. That's what you're going to start the context section with, the general background information. If you got a 50 out of 50 on that part of your paper, you can literally copy and paste it. Most people got a 45, a 44, or a 43 on that part of the paper, and I had some suggestions of what I wanted you to fix. So fix what you need to fix, copy and paste all that general information about the city, Paul, what life was like back then. That begins the context section, probably about a page of information. And then you're going to transition to the literary context, because what you're trying to do in context is set me up for Ephesians 2:1 through 10. So I need the historical background, but I also need the literary context. And as I say on the analysis paper guide, I want you to begin with the theme paragraph. The theme of the book is blah, 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 and Ephesians 2:1 through 10 relates to it because. Then do the before paragraph, then do the after paragraph or section, because that way you're walking me through the context, historical, cultural, and literary. And remember, you need to consult the literary context paper you already turned in. Most people got like C's or B's on that, and I had a lot of suggestions, and in class I went over what I was hoping you would see on the literary context paper when you look at Ephesians 2:1 through 10 in context. So that's the context section. Begins with the general information about Ephesus that we already did, and then it moves through the literary. Both of these are papers that you need to go find, and you need to fix things. And if you were close, you can literally copy and paste. On the historical cultural section, make sure you keep your citation, though. There was in-text citation on that paper and sources, and since we're starting a new paper, you're going to make sure that you carry that over. Okay. Moving on to the content section. The content section is a verse-by-verse analysis of the passage. And so you do one verse at a time. I put mine in italics and I comment. And comments are taking observations that you personally make. You are going to be taking commentary notes. You're going to be taking historical cultural information if there was something specific about that verse. If it's the verse that has your word study, you're going to want to give me 4 or 5 really strong sentences, clearly showing me what that word means in context. Where you're citing the historical culture, the Old Testament usage or other passages, letting me see that you understand the meaning of the word. But you're just trying to break down that one verse at a time. Some of you can do kind of some of this really leaning into your observations. And remember, we did an observation assignment on this passage. And to kind of warm you up for the final analysis paper, where we're going to go verse by verse, I'm asking you to do an assignment called the Ephesians 2:1 through 10 comments A. And in that, I'm just asking you to go through each verse one at a time without using resources and focus on how you would observe and how you would explain it, to kind of build that many of you can do this on your own. But when you've done making these comments and turn in the Ephesian comments A, What I'm going to ask you to add before you turn in the final analysis paper is some commentaries and journals. Now, I have some notes on commentaries. Any book in the library would be a great choice for a commentary in general. What I'm saying is that if you find a commentary online, it's probably free for a reason. Free commentaries are usually because the information isn't good. That's why it's free. They can't make money on it. So I would not suggest using more than one online commentary. And I would suggest going to the library and just finding a commentary on Ephesians. I think I've given some examples in the handout. And just making photocopies. Again, don't take books from the library when there's other students who have to write the exact same paper. It would be just much kinder of you to just make photocopies. But I have in my example here on the analysis guide of kind of what I'm looking for. There's introductory statements, I'm using observations, I'm explaining concepts in the passage from my own observations, and also citing commentaries or historical cultural information. And I'm just trying to thoroughly explain one verse at a time. You may note on the analysis paper guide that I have this bolded, where we were before Christ, 2:1 through 3. That is kind of like a header in the content section to break apart my commentary. And if, as you might note, the where we were before Christ, 2:1 through 3, comes from my outline, which was on the title page. I know on the title page example, I'm giving you James, but this is probably a good way that I would use. I would put the first 3 verses with the title, and I kind of use that in the content section as a way of breaking down the content and providing headers. But you're just going to move through all 10 verses. I think this is probably going to be in the neighborhood of 6 to 8 verses when you think about adding your own observations, commentary notes, word study. Again, you're not copy and pasting your whole word study. You're just going to give me 4 or 5 good sentences. With the historical cultural information, the rest of the paper that you already did, you're not going to just copy and paste a whole page of all the specific notes of historical cultural information. Whenever you're commenting on a verse that has a historical cultural note, you're going to take that 1 or 2 sentences and put it in that section, put it when it's commenting on that verse and cite it appropriately, but you're not going to put it all in as one big chunk. Does that make sense? So if you're commenting in the commentary section, the content section, and you're talking about the prince, the power of the air, and you're making your own observations, and you remember that you have a historical cultural note about that, you're going to go open your historical cultural paper, you're going to take the 2 sentences that are pertinent and copy and paste them into the content section where you are talking about those verses, and keep the citation. Does that make sense? I know you can't answer me, but I still ask that. Anyway, you're going to do that. It's about 6 to 8 pages. I don't really have a hard limit if you want to go over a little bit. I don't think you can do this very well in 4 or 5. In fact, that's never a good sign. It means that you're skipping a lot of content. The last section is the application section. In the application section, I think I've explained it pretty thoroughly. I want you to have a part A where you give me the theory, where you tell me what Ephesians 2:1 through 10 generally means, summarize the content, give me a whole bunch of different ideas of things that could apply, things that you could be things that it might mean in the context. And then also make sure that you're not only hitting the specifics, but you're also hitting the emotional dimension. Sorry, we got a blender going, but that's all right. And then on the part B, you actually need to live something. Let me pause this. Sorry, kids are getting up, so they're making their breakfast smoothies. Anyway, there's going to be in the application section an actual thing that you need to do. You can't tell me what you might do. You can't look to 6 months ago telling me what you did once. It needs to be the meaning of this passage is part A, and here's how the different ways it could apply, and even thinking through the emotional dimension, what might this passage cause somebody to feel, think, do. Give me a bunch of broad ideas in part A, and then B, you're telling me what you did to live this out. You need to, in response to this passage, think through something you could do, go do it, and tell me about it. And if it went well, tell me it went well. If it didn't go well, that's fine. Just tell me how you tried to live the passage out. That is going to be pretty important. In the application section is where you really earn your grade on this paper, because it's you telling me how this passage is supposed to be lived. That's the whole point of the scriptures, is to move from not just information in your head, but to livable action. So this application section is very important to me. And then the last section is a bibliography, and the bibliography has word study tools, historical cultural tools, commentaries, and journals. So, excuse me guys, sorry, please, I'm making a video. That's kind of the last piece. Again, you don't need to go find new word study tools. That's from your previous paper. The historical cultural paper you've already done, same resources. Commentaries you need to go to the library for. We have not used commentaries yet at all. We used background commentaries for the historical cultural information, but that is not the same thing as a traditional commentary. So I'm requiring 4 commentaries. Go to the library, make some photocopies. They'll help you explain them verse by verse. That's what they're good for. And then journals. You're going to find journals on EBSCOhost. So that's the big paper. That's some general information. The first thing that you need to do is the Ephesians Comments A assignment, which is on Converge. You can read about it. I'm just looking for you to use your own comments, and let's pretend you didn't have to do an exegetical paper where you went to the library and got resources. Are you able, on your own observation and explanation skills, able to go verse by verse and break down a passage? I think you have those skills, so I want to see you try, and I think I'm asking for 3 to 4 pages. Well, that's the part A. Part B is I want you to go to the library, and I want you to find some... This is my dog, Blue. She's coming over. I want you to find 4 commentaries and just take a picture of you getting the commentaries. And the point isn't to go grab them and take a picture and put them back. The point is to go make your photocopies so your paper is set up. And then the last part of B is finding journal articles. I think I've explained this, but just so you can see it, I'm going to do this live on my phone, and you won't be able to see it, I know, but you can do this live too. I want you to go to insidecorbin.edu, and under Resources, find Library. After opening Library, you should see a whole host of different things. The Primo, and midway through the bottom, there's like a little search bar, and then there's something that says EBSCOhost. EBSCOhost is the search engine for all of our journals, so click EBSCOhost. And then what should come up is a list of the different databases you can do research on. And if I would choose all databases, and then there's going to be a search bar for you to type something to search all databases for any journal articles that are in existence that Corbin has access to. And I'm going to type Ephesians 2:1 through 10. And I actually see an option to do scholarly or full text. I'm going to click full text. If you cannot find this option yet, that's okay. You can just try searching Ephesians 2:1 through 10. But if you see the option, click full text. And what that means is you don't want to hear about an article that mentions Ephesians 2:1 through 10 that you actually can't read because there's no text available. That's not really helpful to you. You want to find Ephesians 2:1 through 10 articles that have the text so you can actually read the article, okay? And the reason we're doing journal searches is when you progress as a Bible student, the journal articles is where some of the best information is, because rather than writing a commentary in a whole book, they'll address one specific issue. And so we're looking for articles on our passage, anything in our passage that we can use. And so from EBSCOhost, if you've already clicked the all databases and put in the search bar Ephesians 2:1 through 10, go ahead and click search and see what comes up. Now, my first one, and you might find some different ones, is Focus, Ephesians 2:1 through 10, not by works, but for works. And this has full text. It's by somebody named Neff Fay, and the article focuses on this passage. So that could be a good example. What I could do is click on it, just skim it, make sure it talks about our passage. Make sure that it's useful. It's not some bizarre book review or something, but there's actually information on our passage. And if there is, I can put this down as one of my journal articles to come back to later. You don't have to read them now, but you do need to find 4 of them. And what I can tell you is that in my search, I only found 2. I found Provoke to Repentance and Ephesians 2:1 through 10, not by works. Now, if you haven't clicked the full text option, you might have found a whole bunch of other things, but they might not have the text available for you to look at, which means they're not helpful. So then another thing that you might have to do is you might have to go back up to your search bar, and instead of doing Ephesians 2, 1 through 10, pick Ephesians 2, 8. See if an article is maybe not about all those verses, but about one of our verses. And I have now found 10 different articles on Ephesians 2, 8. And I'll have to look through them to make sure, A, that there's full text, B, that they're actually not just mentioning our passage, but giving me information on them, and skimming them to make sure they're quality. Journal articles are a wonderful resource. They're sometimes hard to find, but EBSCOhost is a really good way to do that. Another option potentially is Google Scholar. I'm not sure if you've used Google Scholar before, but it's another way for you to use a search engine to find articles. I would be okay with that, but I think EBSCOhost is going to give you plenty of options if you know how to look for them. Sorry this video ended up being 20 minutes. I wanted to make sure you understood the final analysis paper project, your next 2 assignments on comments A and B, and get you some basic explanations. Thanks, Bible Study Methodsers. Talk to you soon.